Welcome to Parent Coaches Unleashed, the podcast where we dive into the highs, lows, and did that really just happen moment of parenting teens and young adults. We're Carrie and Jessica, parent coaches, mythbusters, and occasional referees in the battle of hormones versus common sense.
If you've ever wondered, is this just happening to me? You're not alone. We're here to help you with real talk, expert advice, and hopefully a few laughs along the way. Need more support? We also offer private coaching, workshops, and speaking engagements because sometimes even parents don't have all the answers.
So continue listening as we tackle this parenting journey together.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Parent Coaches Unleashed. Carrie, big episode for us.
So excited. I cannot believe that it has been 1 year.
It is our 1 year anniversary. What's the present for 1 year? Paper?
I'll send you an email. Congratulations email.
Then I would have to print it out for it actually to be the gift.
True.
Anyway, we just wanted to take a minute and, just talk a little bit about our journey so far with our podcast. We started out wanting to reach as many parents as we can to bring awareness for different topics, different situations. And we feel like we evolved into a niche for more teen, young adult children. Would you agree with that, Carrie?
Yeah. Supporting parents and focusing on the challenges that come with parenting teens and young adults. So that's, I
Yeah.
feel like, where we've landed in this year.
Yeah, I like the way you said that. So, coupling that along with Mother's Day coming up, we decided we would take a look at some really great moms and what their journey has been like, not so much just in parenting, but how they've evolved through their own parenting journey.
Right. And some of the topics we're going to cover today are: how have you reinvented yourself after children? Are you in the same career? Did you stay home? At the very beginning in our first Get to Know You episode, Jessica shares that her dream was to have a family and be a stay-at-home mom. Now, I shared the same dream of wanting to be a mom, but I don't know that I had the dream of staying home. I thought I would be able to manage having a career and being a parent, and that only worked for so long. So we're really excited today to have 3 different moms with us to give different perspectives on their journey as a parent and as a female, as a woman, and also reinventing themselves. Did they stick with the same career? Are they in a different career? How many have they had along the way? But we're really excited to welcome them to our show today.
Carrie, as we wait for our guests to arrive, I'm going to ask you, I know in the past you've shared that you are not in the same career now as when you started out
Yes.
pre-children.
Yes.
What would you say has been the biggest challenge in trying to reinvent yourself, finding something new?
I think my passion changed, and I don't know that that's something that you can predict. I was in human resources and I loved helping people manage their careers,
Mm.
and coaching was a big part of it, which that's similar to what I'm doing today. But what I was doing was coaching adults on how to support them in their career progression. So whether that was being a supervisor, managing people, or wanting to apply for a different role or whatever it was, I was in a consulting environment. But
Okay.
what happened after having children was it became very frustrating to me that when I looked at going to work supporting adults who really couldn't support themselves in their career journey, and I had little children at home who really needed me because they couldn't, right? They're kids. They need a parent to help them develop into, toddlers and teens and young adults. So all of a sudden, I was surprised that I didn't love my job as much as I used to. And that was really, really hard to deal with because I saw myself, as an executive, and there were certainly opportunities to move up in the organization. And I was actually offered a job to move from Florida to Arizona while once I had my first child and they held the position. So it was like really disappointing to me on a personal level that my passion for it had changed. So I think I just had to accept where I was, and I did end up staying home, and then maybe 10 years later went back to work, but it was kind of in a sneaky way. My husband's business, he was working for someone else, said, "Hey, why don't you just consult for us and help us?" And then somehow I got roped into being the HR person. So went back to it, and then again found myself questioning, what am I doing? But I did stay there for many years. That business sold. And then thinking, okay, what am I going to do now? So the coaching piece was still fired, inside me. And that's what kind of led me to coaching, starting with young adults to now parents of teen and young adults. And the podcast for me is super exciting just because I feel like we could reach so many people
Yeah, for sure.
where I still love coaching, but it's just a one off. And I feel like this is a way to get a lot of information to a lot of people at the same time.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good point. But it sounds like in some ways you were always in the coaching realm, different clientele, coaching
yes,
for different reasons, but you always had a hand in coaching, just reinventing what that looked like for yourself. Is that fair?
absolutely. Yeah, that is fair to say.
Our first guest joining us today is Michelle Barron. And the great thing about having Michelle with us today is that she's a repeat. As we celebrate the 1 year anniversary of our podcast, Michelle was the very first guest that we had on. So we are so happy to welcome Michelle back today. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, thank you, and congratulations to you guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're talking today about moms reinventing themselves. So just give us a brief background. What were you doing before you had children?
Before I had children, I was a speech pathologist and I was working in the schools part time, and I had a thriving private practice.
At what point did you decide that was not what you wanted to do anymore? When did you stop?
So I tried to get back into it in the middle of my children, and I just couldn't. We had some stuff go on with our family, and I was just not feeling it anymore. And I just knew that there was something different I had to do. And at that point, I actually took 14 years to just be at home with my kids. But there did come a time at some point where I was like, okay, like laundry, lunches, and tennis. I can't do this all the time anymore. I was ready for something more. I always say that. And to this day, I still don't love to go out for lunch. I'd rather just like move my body or something. But
Right, take a walk and talk instead of eat and sit?
yes, exactly. I'm like the on the go kind of girl. But
Which
it was
actually
like,
feels like a perfect segue to your new career.
yes, yes, but there was a stepping stone along the way. I went at some point I was like, I have to do something, and I didn't know what it was, and I did some research. It sounded great to do recruiting, and I tried it, and for me, the balance between work and family life for me was terrible because a lot of people can't talk about leaving their jobs while they're at their job. So that required me talking to them after hours. So I'd be on the field watching my kids' games on the phone with strangers talking about their lives. And I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. So
Mm.
I pivoted. And how I got into health coaching, which is what I'm doing right now, is because one of my children, my daughter Lara, had stomach issues. She had ulcers. And I was like, okay, I've always loved health and science, cooking, and it just tied together very easily.
That that's great. You actually were able to tie so many of your different passions together. I mean, caring for your daughter and her health issues, and then cooking and all the science of the nutrition part of it.
Yep.
So
Yep.
basically, you stepped into a great new role for yourself,
Yes,
right?
and yeah, I took a lot of time to do the research and to do the work and to get certification after certification, and really, I knew that this is what was gonna be great for not only my family, but it felt like it was in line with what I needed.
Personally, yeah.
Mhm,
Did
mhm.
you have a conversation with your family prior to making the final decision to return to work, or did you just go for it and then when you had something secured, say like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing."
No, there were definitely conversations because, that affect when mom goes back to work, that affects everybody, right? So
Mhm.
it was like, okay, I'm going back. That means you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to do that. And nobody was ready for that, you know? Yeah. So there was definitely some transitions, some tears, and not only from the kids, but for me too. Like it was definitely like, oh my God, like now I'm an early bird anyway. I get up and exercise, but it was like I had to get everything in order, really in order the night before, the morning of before I can leave. And then my brain was always going, what else did I forget? What do the kids need? Because it was just so foreign from what we all had been used to.
Mhm.
Would you say that was the biggest challenge about reinventing yourself and finding this new niche for yourself?
So when I originally went back, my biggest challenge was that it just didn't feel right. Right. I felt like off and I felt like I was doing something that just did not feel inside. Like I didn't feel the inner peace of where I am right now that I was doing what I needed to do. Right. So, like, not only was I like throwing my house into chaos, but I didn't feel right inside. So, when I switched to health coaching, I felt like, okay, everything feels good because I'm doing everything along the lines to help everyone and it feels good for me. Right. So that required a lot more thought. And, I really took time to pivot like, okay, I want to work. I definitely want to do something, but it has to be the right move if I'm going to throw everything up in arms over here.
Mhm.
So I'm curious how this transition for you shows up in your parenting because for those of you who don't know, Michelle has two college age kids who are starting out on their path. One still has a little ways to go, but does it change the narrative when you talk to your kids about what their futures might look like?
100%. 100%. And even like, it's funny, you know, our kids listen and watch even when we don't know. And as you know, my son gave a speech at graduation a few years ago that I was like, oh no, he can't say all these things that made it sound like where he got to, he didn't work so hard. But he basically, in his speech, said, at this point, we don't always know what we're going to do. Like, it's okay to make changes. And at 18, I was like, wow, this kid, this kid's onto something. But he had watched also as I was, at that point in my 40s, pivoting and changing as an adult. So
Mhm.
I think for sure, these kids always are watching what we're doing. And I always tell them, like, try all different things because you never know.
Yeah.
Right.
Was there any thought about the future when you were making that decision? Like, okay, I have X amount of years that I will be empty nesting or my kids will be out of the house. Like, like, were you thinking about that? Or was it more about the present desire to go back to work and do something for yourself?
At that point, empty nesting felt like it was light years away. So I wasn't necessarily thinking that because I also have a child who's in 8th grade. So while my other kids were like in middle school going into high school, my youngest was like just in elementary school. So it was like probably the hardest hit for him, but he was the most resilient with it. Like he had to go into aftercare and I felt such guilt with that. Like, oh, I never did that with the other kids. But like, at some point we pivoted and I made some boundaries like I can only work till this time because I don't want him going there and I'll work from home. But yeah, it was more like my personal need and everybody rallied and came together.
Mhm.
So it's interesting because one of the things I've always said when I made the decision that I needed more, I always said that there's no college counselor, there's no guidance counselor for moms that made the conscious decision and were fortunate enough to be able to be a stay-at-home mom. But when they decide that they want to re-enter the workforce, not necessarily doing what they were doing prior to having children,
Mhm.
it's scary and there's so many unknowns. What would your advice be? What would you say to a mom who was looking to re-enter the workforce after being home with her children?
So I would just say take some time to do research and find what brings you joy and what brings you passion, because you're going to spend a lot of time there. And if you're taking that time away from your home and your family, you want to enjoy it, right? Step into something that you feel that is going to be meaningful. But
Mm.
do the research, for sure. Do the research, because when I first went back, it was like mind blowing how much stuff I didn't know. And then to be older and watching these young people who can maneuver through computer programs and things like that, I hadn't been a part of even apps and stuff like that. And I'm getting back into that with my other side business. And it's like, whoa, like, asking my kids for help. But
Sure.
Yep.
that's a whole new world.
Yes.
Really
We
is.
we
No.
feel that, yeah, no, we feel that struggle with our business and the podcast where, right, the podcast part is coming really easy. It's all the social media stuff that's taking us like hours. And we know if we had a 20 something, it
Yes.
would be done within in 10 minutes. And we're
Yes.
like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You should see the text flying. I know this is a silly question, but, like, it'll only take them 2 seconds, and we're struggling for way too long.
It's
I
true. But I think you're doing a great job. I think you're killing it on social media. Or maybe your kids are saying, "Ma, you're always on, so you're always on, you're posting everything." But in order to bring about the moving the needle, I mean, that's what you need to do. And I think you're killing it. Tell us about
Yep.
the side business.
Thank you. Well, likely my kids are totally embarrassed, but that's okay. I don't think my son looks at my
Feel like that's like part and parcel with being a moms.
It is what it is. So my side business is, as you know, I'm a health coach. So I love to help people find, live their best life, whether it's nutrition or finding ways to find balance in their worlds, move their body, be accountable. That's my passion. I love everything about that. And recently, because I felt like, okay, I know what to do for food and I know how to move my body and, get people establishing habits and stacking them so that
Right.
they can make changes. I felt like the toxins and the pollution, everything that's going on in the world was really, I was not making enough changes in my world. So when it came to skincare, I would say that I was slathering cancer all over my body. But I got involved with this company called Oliveda, which is based in Europe, and everything's regulated by European standards, which is completely different than what we have in the United States, as you know. And
Yep.
so everything is chemical free and toxin free. And so I'm a consultant for that too. So it marries very well with the health coaching
Mm.
and I'm enjoying it. And it definitely keeps me busy and, very social too. So, and on social media. So I'm having fun with that too.
That's great. Michelle, if people would like to find out more about what you're doing or get in touch with you, how can they do that?
So they can find me on social media. Right. Right back to social media. I'm Michelle Barron _ 1L. I'm
Oh,
sure you can link that.
I will link it for sure. We
Yeah.
will.
So you can reach out to me there on Facebook, email. You can put any of my stuff up. Feel free to share any of my contact information.
Michelle, thank you so much for being with us today. And we wish you the best of luck as you continue on your reinvented mom journey.
and we look forward to seeing you next year on our second year anniversary.
Congratulations to you too. You guys have had some really great guests on. I'm enjoying watching your podcast and seeing how you guys have evolved too. So keep doing what you're doing because it's important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us today.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Our second guest has just joined us. We would like to welcome Kelly Merker. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
We're so glad you're with us today to both celebrate our anniversary, to both
Our
celebrate
1 year anniversary of our podcast.
our anniversary episode, which just happens to line up perfectly with Mother's Day. So
I love that.
we're going to just jump right in. We're talking today about moms reinventing themselves. So take us back. Take us pre-children. What were you doing?
So I was a textile designer. That's what I studied in school, and I was working, and I met my husband while I was working, and we dated long distance, and I ended up moving to Florida, and that kind of was the beginning of all of that.
Okay.
Beginning of the journey.
Beginning of
So how many children do you have?
I have 2 girls. My oldest is a junior at Florida State, and my youngest is a graduating senior about to go to Florida State.
Thanks.
Ah.
Oh,
Were you a stay-at-home mom for all the years that they were going through school?
I was.
And then I guess the question would be, was it a clear decision? Was it a gradual one that I need something more, I wanna do something else, or
It's
how did that
it's funny 'cause I was
transition?
thinking about this prior to us talking, and the job I had was in Oklahoma, and I was a textile designer, and I think that career path had great potential for me. And if I had not met my husband and moved to Florida, I can't say that I wouldn't have continued that career and, been a mom and been a working parent.
Yeah.
So I think that because I made the decision to move to Florida, my career path took a complete turn. I moved to Florida without a job, which that's a whole nother. Because my career kind of was what it was when I moved here, it was an easy decision. And I grew up with a stay-at-home mom and she is amazing. And I kind of just thought that that was going to be my path. But I think in the back of my head, I always knew eventually it wasn't that I needed to go back to work. It was that I needed to find something for myself and I needed to tap into that creativity that is in me.
Okay, so I guess then the next question would be, tell our listeners, what is it that you have become or in the process of becoming?
I am an artist. I'm a painter. I now go to those art festivals that magically pop up overnight in areas. Never knew how those magically popped up, and now I'm part of that. And I have a website that I developed for my artwork and social media. So that's what I'm doing.
And you cannot forget that you drive a really large white, is it white? The white van that we tell our children to be afraid of.
Park next to me. Trust me, I don't want anybody else's children. I got my hands full with my own.
So, when you were in the process of starting out on your artistic journey, was it a discussion in your house? Did you guys talk about this is what I want to do and this is the time I need to do it? Or was it just, did you find you just had to make it up as you went along?
It's kind of making it up as I went along, but it also happened organically. It didn't happen like I'm ready to start working. I was missing being creative. I knew always that I had to find that in my life again. And, we've been in this house for quite a long time now, but even prior to that in the house where both my girls were born, it was a prerequisite when I was looking for a house that I needed a little space of my own that I could be creative. And I had that and then never did anything with it. It became a dumping ground. And because I just wasn't emotionally ready to do that or physically ready because I was raising children.
Sure.
So I had this space in my house. My studio is just a bed. I'm lucky to have it. It's just a bedroom in my house. And my mom is an artist. She was coming to visit me and I just thought she was coming for an extended period of time. And I thought it'd be fun if we took a painting class together. And painting was one thing when I was in school that I never studied because I was intimidated by it. So I did drawing, I did ceramics, I did photography, I did jewelry, I did textiles, but I never painted. So I thought that that would be something fun for my mom and I to do. And she ended up having to cancel her trip, but I went anyway. So I started painting, not because I'm like, well, I want to make a business out of this. It was just, I loved painting and loved art. And so that's
Mm.
how it started.
And you were just tapping into your creative side, getting the juices flowing again, so to speak.
That's an amazing story. So, obviously, I own one of your paintings, so I absolutely
Me too.
love them. You are super, super talented. But tell us about the journey or the courage it took to like put yourself out there on social media and actually like attend, right? And be a vendor and find out about all of these art fairs. Like
Yeah.
where, how did that look? How did that feel? How does that feel today too?
Well,
Talk about being vulnerable and putting yourself out there. You just leapt. I mean,
the social media part of it is definitely the first step. I think anybody thinking about, starting a career like this, social media is such a gift for artists or people that need to self promote. So that was a learning curve for me. And it is hard to be vulnerable because it's not like I have a business where necessarily I'm selling a service or something. It's like for art, it's subjective and people have to like me and people have to
Mhm.
like my work. So, I mean, that's an extremely vulnerable place to put
Mhm.
yourself. And I luckily have not seen that kind of ugly side of social media. Most of the reaction I've gotten has been positive. Of course, I still have a pretty small platform, so that might be part of it also. And then once that social media side of it started to pick up and I developed my website, which to me as a Gen X woman, being able to do that is something so empowering that I was able to,
Like you did it yourself?
yeah. Uh,
Woo!
so all of these steps, these growing a social media platform, this developing a website, figuring out how to break into the art fair world is all these steps. And I was really proud of myself each step of the way. Definitely the art fair part is a big part of it. And my husband has been such an amazing support through all of this. And when it comes to the art shows, we are a team. For me, it's a two-person, physically, it's a two-person job to move all that stuff, to put up tents. And it is physically grueling and demanding. I mean, I make it look glamorous.
maybe you can tap into the reality TV show world of what it's like in an art show.
4 in the morning and then having to change the van. So
Ah.
super.
I'm sure the stories you could tell. Are your girls tapping into their creative side? Are they doing anything along those lines?
Yes and no. I think that my oldest has a such an amazing gift for graphic design, and we've encouraged that. My youngest is starting to do stuff with like, I don't know what you call it. Like, I'm going to say bedazzled, but that's not the right word. But like,
Yeah.
she's doing some things.
Embellishment.
Yes. But, I just want them to chart their own course and find their own path. So I love that I share this gift with my mom, but they can do whatever they want.
As you are on your journey to becoming an even more successful artist than you already are, and you've reinvented yourself this way, how would you like that to translate as a role model to your girls? I mean, you've done some incredible things as going out on social media, creating not even the artist part of it, but just the technical side of figuring everything out. What message would you like your girls to take away from what you've shown them?
Well, first, I'm just grateful that as cringy as some of the things I have put out there, they're still encouraging. A couple things where they're like, oh my God, please do not post.
You're not the first person to say that.
This seems to be a recurring theme today.
I think part of it is the fact that I have two daughters is part of this, that I want them to be proud of me, to see that they can be mothers if they choose to be, and also find a career path or a passion that they can pursue. I think that maybe it's getting harder for young women to have the ability to stay home financially. So
True.
uh,
Sure.
I just want them to see that they can. I don't, it's easy for me to say that they can do both because my job or career is I'm getting out of it however much I put in. And in the beginning, when my kids were younger and I was starting out, it was not all the time. I was not going to an office, to a job. I was my boss. And so I could set my own schedule and things like that and still be there for my kids. And so that made it easy. I think that other moms, whether they're working or just starting to reinvent themselves, might not have that same luxury as, kind of setting their own schedule.
Yeah.
I kind of got,
It is interesting how times have changed,
yeah.
even from when your mom was a mom to what young moms have now. And
Mhm.
I think the job force in general, with so many remote options, makes it easier for a woman to not have to choose between having a career and being a mom. I mean, not that it should ever be a choice. If a woman wants to do both, she should be able to.
And I also think that hopefully, as we evolve as a society, that it becomes a shared responsibility with mothers and fathers to take care of the home, to take care of the kids, that also then give women the option and ability to work and do what they want to do in terms of their careers and still have a family.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping that there'll be a lot more flexibility for both parents, right? If both parents have the ability to have flex jobs where sometimes one's home, sometimes the other's home, if they're raising a family, that maybe it will be easier for them to manage it all. I first was full time, and then after I have children, I then tried part time, but I found it very hard to fit in as a part-time working mom to try to find other mom friends because it felt like either people were stay-at-home moms or working full-time. And so I found myself in a very weird place trying to meet other moms in the same situation. But
Mm.
I think today it's probably very different
Mm-hmm.
because everyone has this fluidness and flexibility and then we're probably going to see a lot of single moms, right? Moms that don't really want to either have a partner or don't want to get married, but they want their children where, it wasn't as accepted
Yeah.
when we were in that stage. So
That's a good
I'm
point.
actually excited to see for all of our children how they navigate all of this going forward. And I mean, personally, I feel like they're going to be older at the time that they make these choices. Like I was really young when I got married and had kids. So, but I'm excited. And maybe it's different. I have boys. You guys, I mean, Jessica has both boys and girls, but Kelly, you have girls. I don't know. My kids aren't so ick about me being on social media. It's probably because they don't pay attention as
I don't think
much
she's
as maybe
following
if I
us.
had daughters. That part I feel good about because, you know, it is, it's difficult at our age to put yourself out there.
Yes.
And even though I'm not looking for 20-year-olds to comment or follow what, Jessica and I are putting out for our podcast, but it's still, I feel shy about like our aged people watching and seeing what we're saying and how they're going to judge or be critical or hopefully they'll relate. But that's to me one of the hardest parts. Like we all right now feels like are following our passion, but to just show it out there for everybody, just sometimes I struggle. And
I think
Kelly, it looks like you're doing a really good balanced job with it that it's not obvious if you're feeling that way.
I think probably there's more people out there that are silently kind of like, look at them. I think we're our own worst critics and we're hardest on ourselves. And as I see my friends start to recreate themselves, as we're talking about, I'm just so thrilled for them and proud of the things that they're doing. And, I'm proud of myself. So I think that's what's most important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And right there is a perfect lesson for all of our kids to take away, to be proud of yourself and what you're doing, to take pride in your work, whatever that looks like for you.
Something that was really profound for me, and I know that, God, I just lost her name. She's the one that talks about vulnerability.
Brene Brown.
Yeah. So I know that she can be a controversial figure for for some people. But when she was talking about Roosevelt's quote about being vulnerable, and there's something just so profound about the idea that it's easy to be critical if you're not putting yourself out there. And so, just go for it and do it, and don't worry about what other people are thinking, and just be proud of what you're putting out there.
So if one of our listeners wants to own a Kelly Merker art original a piece of Kelly Merker art, how do they find you?
Well, I am on Instagram. I'm Kelly Merker Art throughout all of the socials and on my website. So
We will put that link in our
thank you.
notes.
My art show schedule is kind of over for the season. Our season goes in the fall and winter in Florida.
Yeah, because you don't want to be outside
Oh God,
sweating
melting.
in 90-degree weather
Sure.
in Delray Beach.
Be spending my summers or my summer painting, but I do commissions and I do a kind of a variety of things, abstracts, and my work is about color and texture and kind of joy. It's one of my favorite things is when people react to my work in a positive way, because that's really the message I'm trying to convey.
Well, I know when I walk past my pieces that I have hanging in my house, that is definitely what I feel when I see them is joy.
Thank
So
you.
thank you. And thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
As we continue our conversation about moms reinventing or recreating themselves, we would like to welcome our third mom to our show, Ilise Litwin. Hi, Ilise.
Hi, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm very good, and I'm very excited to be here with you guys.
Well, we're so excited to have you. So, we know we're talking about moms reinventing themselves, recreating what they're doing. So, tell us, what were you doing prior to having children?
So prior to having kids, I got my degree in recreational therapy from UF, and I worked in inpatient, outpatient psychiatric units. At one time it was day programs, at other times it was the locked units with your more chronic patients. So I did that ever since I got out of college, basically, and worked with dual diagnosis, all different psychiatric illnesses, adolescents, peds, older adults, the whole gamut of it.
Okay. So then you have two girls. Did you make a conscious decision to be a stay-at-home mom? Did you still work after you had your girls? Tell us what that part of your journey was like.
Okay, so my first daughter, my girls are 7 years apart. I had two marriages. So my first daughter, I did work. I was a
Okay.
single mom, and I worked in a hospital down in North Miami Beach, Florida, and it was a locked unit. And I did rec therapy, and rec therapy basically is I would do intakes with my patients, and then I would have about 25 clients in a group, and we would talk about your coping mechanisms and basically using recreation, healthy things. How can you cope when you're experiencing a lot of anxiety or feeling depressed, or you feel like you want to use if you are a dual diagnosis patient? So I did that with my first daughter. Then when I got pregnant with my second daughter, my second marriage, that's when I stopped working. So it's not the safest of environments,
Mhm.
to say the least. And I was ready. It's a high burnout field, and I was ready to put that down. So I did.
Okay. So then how many years were you fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home mom?
Well, I mean, if you don't count the podcast and me being an author and all that stuff, my daughter's 20. So 21 years, basically, I guess.
No,
No.
wait.
Count the other. No.
Yeah, no, back it up because all that stuff really matters. So,
Yes. And
no.
where did that come from? So tell us at what point did you say, I have a book in me or I have a podcast in me? Tell us that. Tell us that part of your story.
So when my older daughter was already in college, because they're 7 years apart, it was about 2 years before my youngest was going to go to college. At that point, they're so independent. I
Right.
remember sitting on the couch, binge watching one of my favorite reality TV shows and going, is this it? What happens now to me? Like, what do I do now? I don't know. Like, and
Right.
I felt like kind of lost at that time, I would say. And
I
I
like
just
the
kind of
expression, what do I want to be when my kids grow up?
Yes.
exactly. What do I want to be? And I just didn't think there was anything because I didn't want to do what I did before. I just didn't have it in me. I'm a very empathetic person. I take on all that stuff and I just didn't have it in me anymore
Boy,
to be a good wife and a good mom to do that. So it literally took COVID and I was sitting at home and I was like all of us, going out of our minds, trying to figure out what to do with ourselves. And I was always that person that not just my close friends, but like peripheral friends would come to me. I'm like that magnet for wanting advice and how can I, maneuver around these things in my life. I'm thinking about leaving my spouse, those kind of things.
okay.
And so I thought, how could I do this without having to work in that environment that I worked in before? When I started at UF, I started in journalism.
Okay.
So voila, podcast, was a therapist, mental health
Ah,
podcast. And
Okay.
so
So then
so
tell
I
us
kind
about
of
reinvented
your,
myself.
married everything.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Exactly.
You took all of
Exactly.
your greatest assets and put
Yep,
them together.
I
So
did.
tell us about your podcast. What do you cover on your podcast?
So because I started during COVID, it was very different back then. And, you know, I was a newbie and kind of just did my research and dove into it. But now I've got 6 seasons, 186 episodes. So
Congratulations.
I've become
Amazing.
very versed in it and know all the ins and outs. And it's a mental health podcast, but it's not clinical. I will talk a little bit about some clinical things, but what I try to do is I tell my own stories or I tell friends' stories if they say it's okay. I want my listener to connect with me with the everyday things that we experience
Sure.
in our mental health or in our daily challenges or our daily struggles. This season's a little bit more raw. I let
Also, more emotional. The
eh,
stories are more in depth.
I would say emotional, but less. I started out as less politically correct
Okay.
because I was running my podcast almost as if I was doing a therapy session.
Okay.
And now I just feel the world is so chaotic that I just don't want to run it that way. I just want to be real, raw, a little bit edgy. My language is a little bit not as clean as it was. I was always trying to find like stay in these parameters. And now I'm just really being true to who
Yeah.
I am.
Now you're just letting loose.
I,
Now you're
I'm
just letting
I'm
loose.
done with it. I'm letting loose. It
But
is what it
you
is.
know, I love that the transition for you because you start here you are, you married your passions and you started out little by little and then you evolved
Yeah.
into who you are
Yeah.
and how you are coming across as listeners. It was like baby steps. So you could see
For
it,
sure.
you can see the transition. That's
Totally could see the transition. And in my intro, I say, let's listen, let's talk, let's evolve together. And
Ah, I love that.
that's my perspective is we're all changing. Obviously, we know because we're a little bit older that you get to know yourself so much more as you
Mhm.
get older.
Yeah.
And I really just have a finger on who I am, what I want, where I want to go. And I don't let those social parameters kind of inhibit me anymore
Mhm.
where I really did before. And so I think that's why I've evolved so much because I've kind of just let those boundaries go.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And you talked about a book. Did the book come before the podcast, during?
The
When did the
book
book?
has been out. It'll be a year this summer. So
Okay.
way after the
Congratulations.
podcast.
Okay.
What I did with the book, it was always a bucket list item. So check, that's off. I decided to do it from my very first season of my podcast. And I took my favorite episodes
Mm.
and created those into chapters because not everybody, yes, we love podcasts, but
Yeah.
not everybody does.
Right.
And my book's an easy read, and it kind of goes through different aspects, and you can see how it will help the reader evolve as they're go. Just like if you were listening to me in the beginning, how each podcast took you on a journey to evolve. So that's kind of how the first book was.
So
Okay.
that's been the theme of your podcast and your continue along with that evolution.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My whole existence, what I preach to people is evolution.
Mm,
To me, that's the key of everything is how do we evolve? It can be big steps, it can be little steps, but that's how we move through life, not over it, not under it, not around everything that goes on us. We go through it, we evolve a little bit each day, each moment, each thing that we do. And that's when your world opens up, when you allow yourself to evolve. It's when you're stuck, like I was sitting on the couch, figuring
right.
out, well, what am I going to do? Right. It's once you start to feel yourself evolve, the whole world just becomes a little bit more, I guess, magical.
Yeah.
And
How do your daughters feel about you putting your stuff out there?
They're okay with it. I have one daughter who is extremely verbal herself. She actually was, before TikTok, it was Musically, and
Mhm.
she actually was semi famous, popular before it became TikTok. So she's totally a social media buff. So
Okay.
she was totally for it. My other one's in politics, works on Capitol Hill. So she's very much into expressing yourself. So they were both cool. The only problem they have is sometimes they want to get a hold of me. And I'm like, I'm podcasting, I'm working.
I'm
And they're like, but mom doesn't work. I'm working.
That's
So
interesting.
that
That was
transition
for
is
that.
happening. Yeah, it's happening where I have to say, mom has a job now. Yes, I'm my own boss. Yes, I make my own hours, but when I'm working, I'm working. And so they've had that transition a little bit, even all the way from DC, where one lives and the other one's in college.
Okay. You talk about evolution and from going from sitting on your couch to binge watching your favorite reality TV show to where you are now. What was the most challenging part to take that first step? What was it, fear? Was it anxiety? Like what was the most challenging, I guess the most challenging obstacle you had to overcome in taking that first step?
Me.
Mm.
Mm,
It was me. It was me finding the confidence, thinking that I was good enough, thinking, who wants to hear my voice? Why would they want to hear my voice? Finding it in myself to know that I was good enough to be able to do this. So I was really the thing that was stopping me.
right.
I'm always the thing that's stopping me from accomplishing anything. It's those fears, those anxieties that, I mean, I have social anxiety. So, like, it's those fears. So it was me.
Right. I feel like that's true for so many of us.
Yeah.
We can't get out of our own way fast
Nope.
enough.
We can't. We can't.
Yeah, and I
And I
think
mean,
we could both totally relate to that as we're on our own journey as well,
right.
putting ourselves out there, right? Totally relate to getting in your own way
Yep.
of who's going to listen? Who's
Right.
going to find this relevant? What are
We're so
people
good
going
at
to say?
we're
Right.
so good at
Right. And
saying the things we can't do instead of trying to build ourselves up for what we can do.
exactly. And I mean, in life, we have to find that self confidence or that spark from ourselves. We always are looking for those external things to like validate us.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But if we can validate ourselves, that's when it just kind of opens up and you say, and I was like, everything I did in the beginning, how am I sitting? How am I looking? How am I sounding? Because we know people are watching us and we know people are listening and we have to do social media, even if that's not what we're comfortable with.
Mhm.
That's just part of putting ourselves out there. What you're doing right now, you're an influencer. So we don't consider ourselves
Right.
influencers like the kids, but we are influencers and we are looked at as influencers. And so it's that whole everything. Like,
Yeah, we hear the word influencers and it feels like almost like a different generation for us.
yeah.
Like it just feels like such a younger generation that is taking on that influencer role. Was there a part of you that was apprehensive about starting this because of all of the new technology and social media, everything else you would have to learn in starting what you were doing?
Oh, yeah. And I'm still trying to figure it out. I mean, it's hard. You guys know. I mean, my husband's a techie, but he's got his own full-time job. So I'm just trying to maneuver and navigate it myself. And I get so proud of myself when I figure something out and I don't have to ask him. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I did it because it's
Empowering.
and it's all changing all the time.
Yeah.
You need to like you have to go on Instagram, you have to go on TikTok, you have to go on YouTube, and they're all different platforms. They all run differently. And it's just so hard if you're not in that younger generation.
Mhm.
And we didn't grow up
Yeah.
with computers. I mean,
Right.
they were there, but in the classroom, that was about it. Not in
It's
our
like learning
homes.
a new language.
It totally is. It totally is. And then you want to be relevant. So you have to constantly find myself educating myself behind the scenes.
Mhm.
Because yes, what is my demographics? Yeah, it's like 40 and older. But I do talk about things that younger people can really relate to. So with the social media and everything, trying to tap into that audience as well, it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge.
Sure.
So who would you say is your target audience? Like, who would you really, like, love to reach?
I think that mental health has such a stigma. I COVID was so horrible, but there were good things that came out of it. Because I started this podcast then, you notice people ex- because they weren't at work. I mean, even famous people, right? Celebrities. They were talking about the things, the anxiety, the depression that they were feeling at home. It definitely shined a light on it, but it still has that stigma. And I want to reach the person, the everyday person, not the person necessarily who's been put into a diagnosis,
Mhm.
but somebody who has a lot of anxiety or somebody who just kind of every now and then feels a little down or feels overwhelmed to go into social situations or with the climate of our world. It is so chaotic the minute you walk out of your house. So really I want to target any age, but that specific, how can I function better in my everyday life?
Yeah.
What are the little tips? And by me telling and I really, which was hard, open myself up. I talk about my personal things, but the feedback I get, that's when they really connect with me
Yeah.
because they see me not as a therapist, but
Right.
just as a human being. And that just kind of gets people to want to listen to you more.
One of the things that Carrie and I have said since we've begun our journey together is that we don't want any parent to think that they're alone in what they're going through because so often when you're whatever it might be, when you're alone with your thoughts, you often come to the conclusion, I must be the only person going through this right now. And that is
Yep.
so far from the truth. So I think what you said is so important that you're not alone. You're not alone. Who can I reach? Even if it's just one person to get that message across to, I think it's so important what you're
It,
doing.
it is. It is. Thank you. And I have a child who had an IEP.
Mhm.
And every day she'd come home so frustrated, anxiety, and I felt as a parent, what am I doing wrong? Every day she'd get in the car and it would be this whole thing going on because was trying to stay like within her, proper boundaries at school, but she had to let that out. And I'd be like,
Mhm.
what am I doing wrong? Nothing. I'm not doing anything wrong. I just have to listen to her. I
Yeah.
have to understand what she's going through. And then we can talk. Once I've listened, well, obviously this was years ago, but once I listened, how can I help her cope? What strategies that I can give her at her level for her to be able to understand and function? So we do think a lot of times as parents that we're doing things wrong if our kids aren't those cookie cutter kids.
Mhm.
And there are kids who are, and there's nothing wrong with the cookie cutter kid, but not all of us have that. Not all of us have the kids who excel in school and, just get good grades. Or let's be real, with social media, that's a whole other ball game on how that affects our
Right.
kids.
Mhm.
So being a parent and trying to navigate all that is very hard.
Yeah. And you say cookie cutter kids, but that doesn't mean that we know what goes on behind those closed doors either. What
No,
what expectations they're living up to or
we
what
just
they're
don't.
carrying with them. Yeah, it's
Right, and
It reminds me of when I was a single mom and I would go to mommy and me groups, and all the moms and dads would be there and I'd be by myself. I'd feel sorry for myself. 5 years down the road, I'm now remarried, they're getting divorced. So it's just like you said, you don't know. Everybody
mm,
kind of puts this thing on and you really don't know. And you find yourself comparing to that what they're showing on the surface. And really you don't know what's going on. And just I think that's why it's so important just to focus on yourself and what's going on in your world.
yep.
all right, so if someone is listening, well, there are a lot of people listening right now, but
Yay.
when they want to reach out to you
Or listen to your
or
podcast and
listen to
read your
your
book. How do
podcast
they find us?
or purchase your book,
Yes.
tell us how everyone can gain access to you. What's the best way to find you?
All right, let's start with the book. The book's called The Wanderlust Within, A Journey to Self-Discovery by Ilise Litwin. There's a cute
Okay.
little redhead on the front.
Oh, I wonder why.
I wonder why. AK, that's what my AKA is, Fiery Redhead. I used to never embrace the red hair, and now I totally do. So you can get that online, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, even if you live in another country. Some of your online smaller bookstores, just go in, put it, and the book will pop up.
Okay.
Purchase it hardcover, Kindle, softcover. My website is wideopenspaceswithilise.com. Ilise is Ilise.
Okay.
And
Those links on our notes.
yep, and you can go on any podcast you love, look for Wide Open Spaces with Ilise or wideopenspaceswithilise.podbean.com.
Okay.
All right.
And all my social media, go like me, follow me, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We
Yep.
got to push that too. So,
Absolutely. All the
yep,
time. We're pushing everything.
yep.
Elise, thank you so much for being with us today. We wish you so much luck and success
Thank
with
you,
all of
you
your
too, as
endeavors.
well. It was such a pleasure to be, and it was nice meeting you, Carrie.
Nice
And
meeting you
thank you so
too.
much, Jessica. I appreciate
Thanks
it.
for being with us.
All
Next
right.
time, my podcast.
Yes.
Absolutely. We look forward
Okay.
to it.
We
Sounds
look forward to
great. Bye,
it. Thank
ladies.
you. As we wind down this episode of meeting some fabulous moms who have reinvented themselves, Jessica, why don't you close us out and share with us your journey and your challenge to reinvent yourself?
Sure. We really did have some great guests today. I really enjoyed them. So I guess for me, I've said before, I was a teacher after my first daughter was born. I made the conscious choice and was fortunate enough to be able to be a stay-at-home mom. And my first two were so close together that it just made sense for us. And I always felt the need to try to do something. Oh my gosh, I tried so many different things. At one point, I was scrapbooking, and Lonnie suggested, oh, maybe you can make a business out of that. And then I tutored for a while, and then we moved to Florida, and when my all of the kids were in school, there was something I wanted to do something. I just did not know what it looked like. I tried substituting, and that was not it. Oh my gosh, at one point we started a glass company, and I just want to say that sales is not my forte by any stretch of the imagination. And I know I've spoken about this before, but I somehow came upon parent coaching, got certified in that, and then trying to build a business somewhere along the way, you and I met, and we just started having these great conversations about where this was going to take us. Our podcast was born. And like you said, Carrie, the podcast part is the fun part of this. It's the easy part. It's talking, it's about informing, educating, just sharing with other parents out there. The hardest part for me is making myself vulnerable in terms of social media. I don't know if it's so much of the the technological part of it, putting ourselves out there, or the fear of judgment? Like, what are people going to think about this if we put it out there? And just finding the confidence to move on. And I guess in the back of my mind, I always know, I guess I always want to do this for me, but I also want to do something that my kids will look at and say, I'm so proud of my mom for what she's done. You know, I take pride in my kids and what wonderful humans they're turning into. And I just want to make them proud with what we're putting out there as well.
Yeah, I
So,
love that. You know what? Just being you and just showing up, they are proud. They are proud. You don't have to move mountains to make your family proud. But what I think overall, and concluding with like, and what was common amongst all the, excuse me, all the women we spoke with today was everyone like s- found their passion,
yeah,
right? And our passions changed, right? When we're younger, before kids, we get married, we have family, like life happens and our passions do change. But I think all of us right now at the middle of our lives are on this journey where we have found new passions and we have all taken the risk to put ourselves in these vulnerable places and put ourselves out there because this is what feels good, even though it feels uncomfortable, because we are passionate about what we're doing. So
yes.
I
I love
think
that.
that's
You
the
said that beautifully.
message.
You said
And
that beautifully, Carrie. Thank
thank
you.
you. All right. Well,
Happy
congratulations.
anniversary.
Congratulations to us.
Yes.
We did it. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. We know this is probably a long episode today, probably one of our longest, but we appreciate you guys so much. So, as always, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are so grateful. And
Stay
like,
tuned for some
yeah,
wonderful things in season 2 of Parent Coaches Unleashed.
yep. And again, share with a friend, and you know where to reach us on social media, Parent Coaches Unleashed, and email info@parentcoachesunleashed.com. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Parent Coaches Unleashed with Carrie and Jessica. Together, we can raise the next generation of independent, capable, and compassionate young adults.
We encourage you to send us an email with questions and feedback to info@parentcoachesunleashed.com. Please remember, you are not alone on this parenting journey.